So, got screen record going. So I felt that was a very good way to perhaps start off this chat. Those experiences are very real for many of us in our community, and I think that it's something that has to be addressed because we're all human beings and we want what's best for everybody. So it's important that when I watch those videos, it definitely brings up a lot of emotions, which I'm sure many people can probably hear in my voice right now. And it's hard. This conversation is really difficult for many people to have, which is why I wanted to have it with everyone and everyone that's listening. This is my mom.
Hello, everybody.
Who clearly felt the need to come up and join. This is her cameo, I guess. It's really difficult to talk about these things because we don't talk about them often. I talk about it with my mom all the time, my dad all the time, my brother all the time, and the people closest to me all the time. So for me to share any sort of emotion, it's fairly rare. And I know that Ayanna's little sister is listening, who said, "I've never seen Tasia cry." And well, here you go, Emma. This is for you. So when I share those, it's because those are, we get the look all the time and we have those discussions all the time. And for us, we just try to brush it off and move forward like it didn't happen. And that can be overwhelming to deal with. And sometimes I know that I get home and I get angry more so than sad. So I think there's 82 people listening, and for me that says something really, really powerful about the sport community. I know there's a lot of basketball people on here, but sport in general, we all have athletes that get the look and have had the talk, and oftentimes our coaches and our leaders don't know the burden that they take home every day or the burden that they bear when they go to a practice or a game or a certain gym, and it can be overwhelming. So I just really clearly felt that those two videos were important to share because they bring a lot of emotion up for me when I watch them, and then to talk about them. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Tasia. I'm the technical director of basketball in Nova Scotia, and we did Courtside Seats 3 times for just empowering women into, my nose is running very clearly, to empower women to be coaches and to be leaders in basketball. And then when obviously everything started to unfold and be right in our faces with Black Lives Matter, this was something that our office talked about and recognized the need for it, because obviously basketball has a lot of people of color, both Black and Indigenous. So I just appreciate that we have 83 people that are here to learn, and it's important to know that it's a learning experience for me, for everyone on the call that's leading, and for everybody that's tuned in to listen. So it's very clearly a safe space, given the fact that I clearly just cried. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I hope that the athletes that are listening are aware that there are coaches on here that are trying to learn, and we're all trying to do better as individuals. So I'm going to pass it off to my good friend Ayanna, since you work with us here at Basketball Nova Scotia, and if you could do an introduction. I know Ayanna and I've talked quite a bit about this. Obviously, my good friend here is very clearly not Black, but she deals with another form of racism that we don't relate to. So Anna, if you want to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Ayanna Empringham. I am the operations coordinator at Basketball Nova Scotia. It's my second year here, so I might be a familiar face to some of you. I'm part of the Nova Scotia Wampanoag Council, and a lot of you probably don't know what that is. That's completely fine. It's not a known one around here. But basically, I'm Métis, so that means I am not fully Indigenous, which explains why I look the way I do, and I don't look like a stereotypical Indigenous person when you think of one, but that doesn't make me any less of what I am. So yeah, I want to talk about anything that, like, things that I deal with that aren't the same as Tasia said, that aren't the same as what someone that is a visible minority is. But yeah, that's why I'm here, and I want to be here and talk about listen and learn at the same time as talk about things that I deal with. So
Awesome. I'll go in alphabetical order here. So we'll head over to Coach Bell.
You have to go by first name or last name. I'm still next. I'm looking J or B. I'm still next. How you guys doing? My name is Jonathan Bell, Coach Bell. A lot of people know me by. I'm excited to be here, man. I'm glad for the invitation. I won't bore you, but a few things. Number one, I'm a youth minister, a youth pastor at my church at EBC, the meeting place in Hammonds Plains. I'm a husband for 10 years. I'm a father of 3 and 4 on the way in August.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm a teacher for 12 years. I'm a basketball coach. I'm the founder and head coach of Red Basketball. I'm a mentor. I try to do my best to mentor youth in all aspects, and I'm a former, still hoop a bit, but former basketball player here in this province as well as Ontario, where I grew up with my Jamaican background. And yeah, man, that's it. I'm just here ready to have a good, real conversation.
Awesome. Throw it up to you there, Sean. You're on my top left.
Okay, thank you, Tasia. My name is Sean Francois, and I'm an assistant coach with Basketball Nova Scotia for my second year now in the U14 female athletes program. And I was fortunate enough to be able to lead the junior academy on the female side this past fall, and really learned a lot through that. I also coach basketball, in addition to basketball, I also coach soccer. So just became CSAC licensed certified a couple of years ago and involved in the community with United DFC at the club level for soccer. And just passionate about basketball, but as Tasia said, I really wanted to, lend, my ear and some words today to help, go through this discussion. It's important topics, something that people of color, not just Black people, but definitely Black people in the moment. And it's been a cycle, and we're trying to break out of this. And I think that the more voices we can have here today, and as Tasia mentioned, all the people on listening, willing to open their ears and to learn, I think will help us get to where we need to be.
Awesome. And no one, I'm guessing almost no one on the call knows this special individual here. This is my good friend, Winta. Winta and I played basketball together way out in Thunder Bay at Lakehead University. And Winta and I have been having some chats over the past week or so about how we talk to our athletes and how we can help our athletes, and just how we've been managing during this time. So I'm very honored that she took the time to jump on this call with us. And I know that there's a lot of people who are, well, we're all from Nova Scotia, so we're not too familiar with Winta. So the fact that you felt that this was important enough for our province, and you jumped on for us, it means a lot. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Tasia, for having me. Honestly, I was honored for you to ask me, but yeah, I'm really happy to be here. As Tasia mentioned, my name is Winta. I coach basketball in Ontario. So I currently now coach at Bill Crothers for their senior boys prep team. And then I also coach for the Northern Kings AAU program. So we've been lucky to have some great talented student athletes come from Nova Scotia and play for that program. So I've been witness to some of the great work you guys have been doing here at Nova Scotia basketball. And, you know, I work as a physiotherapist. That's my day job. So primarily with children and youth and their families. And I'm really excited to sort of speak about this. I've been looking at this sort of more so from a healthcare lens, just because that's where the majority of my work lies. But I think there are a lot of intersections between that and sport as well.
Liz is stepping out now. Bye, everybody.
Hi.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So reliable. Her and Dad went on a
30-kilometer
bike ride today, and she made an appearance just now. So respect. So the chat box is open, and the Q&A is open as well. So at any time, if anyone has any questions or any comments, you can fire it in there. I know we did receive a few questions in advance, which is great. I have them written on my phone, so I promise I'm not reading text messages. So I think one of the first things that I would like to do to really emphasize the fact that we do experience this is if everyone's comfortable with sharing a time in sport, it doesn't necessarily have to be basketball, but a time in sport where racism did occur to them, and maybe how it impacted them or how it was handled in a sense. And I'll be not more than happy to start because it's not happy, but I will start with my experience. We just rewind time back to Thunder Bay on a basketball court. I know who we were playing. I know where I was standing. I know someone was shooting foul shots, Winta, down by our bench. I can picture exactly where I was. My parents were there. It was in my second year of university, and I was standing outside of the three-point line because obviously was not tall enough to be in battling with the bigs. And the opposing player on the other team decided it was a grand time to start making fun of my complexion, which was awful. For anyone who might not be familiar with a black skin tone, we have some hyperpigmentation if ever we have a blemish or any form of acne. So I was getting made fun of for the color of my skin and the marks that were on my skin. And I remember I said something back, and then it just continued until the end of the game. And this player said something to me again, and we were ahead by I think it was 5 with maybe 3 seconds left. We sealed the deal for the most part, and my teammate inbounded it, and this other player on the other team said something to me again, and I pocketed the ball on my hip and started yelling at the player and was walking towards her, and the official called me for a travel, which obviously means it went back to the other team. And I remember going to our coach Winta, and I apologized because I was so upset that I almost cost our team the game because I traveled with the ball because someone just would not leave my skin tone alone. And the fact that, I'm a competitive person, I'm here to win, but clearly in that moment, how I was being treated certainly took over. And I remember I went right to coach and apologized and went and talked to my parents, and they were like, "Why did you walk with the ball? What were you doing?" And I said, "This player started making fun of me at one end of the court and just proceeded, and it just reached a point where I couldn't not stand up for myself." So I was called for a travel. Obviously that is a turnover, which ruins the stats, but that was one that stands out to me as an athlete. And I know we're talking to athletes and to coaches, and that for me was just something that it happens, and it was obviously upsetting. floor is everyone else's.
Okay, I guess I can go next since I unmuted myself. My example, which unfortunately a lot of times when, I was faced with, racist words and, racist tropes happened mostly at school. First, it was elementary school, but the first time involving sport, it was actually in phys ed class in high school. And it was either grade 10 or grade 11. And I remember that there was this guy on the team, in my phys ed class, and he was on the football team. And he decided that I wasn't quote unquote black enough. And so there's a known racist trope called when you call someone an Oreo, meaning that they're black on the outside, white in the middle, which to me, it's offensive, obviously, but I had it within myself for it not to bother me as much as it could have, mainly because my parents raised me to understand that you're black and you should be proud to be black, and understood history and culture behind that. And so as upsetting as it wasn't even that he said that. He took it to another level and used another term and called me a Klondike bar. So I was using the word Oreo as the example so you would understand what I mean, but that's what he called me. And then there's like a song or theme song to like the actual advertisement of that ice cream bar, and he would sing that song when he would see me. And again, this was in phys ed class, and it happened multiple times. And, I tried to let it go. I don't even remember. I'm pretty sure I definitely didn't. I definitely didn't go to phys ed teacher and tell them that was happening. I just kind of brushed it off. I was like, yeah, that's on him. It's not on me. That's how he's trying to make me feel bad, is by trying to make me see him as less than. But that was really the first time anything around sport where, I was subjected to something like that.
That's a new one.
I'll hop in. Similar to Sean, mine was, not on a basketball court or on a sporting field or surface. It was more associated with travel with sport. So I grew up in Ottawa. And the basketball scene there is relatively, I was about to say, I know your name is so familiar, and I think I know why. But yeah, so the sporting scene is relatively diverse, but I know when I was younger, a lot of our tournaments happened in smaller cities in and around Ottawa, which were less diverse. And I remember stopping at a truck stop on the way to a tournament and just going to the bathroom. It's busy, lots of people traveling on the weekends. I go to the bathroom, flush the toilet, leave, and then a lady immediately enters after me. And she said, why didn't you, I could hear her yell back to me, why didn't you flush the toilet? You people are so dirty. And I was like, what? First off, I know I flushed the toilet because, I just know I did. And then two, why is this lady so aggressive? And I never had anything, I guess, overtly. A lot of the stuff before was more of a microaggression or whatnot that's happened in school or sport or whatever. So that I know put me off, and I think I was quiet for the rest of the car ride. And I don't think I ever brought it up to anybody because I just thought it wasn't a big deal. And then obviously you go on to life and you realize that wasn't appropriate. And this is a grown woman speaking to a teenager like that. So yeah.
I can speak on something. A lot of mine is just kind of telling me I don't look a stereotypical way. So people really question me almost every single time I even say that the Indigenous word. If I say, yeah, I'm Indigenous, it's like, no, you're not. I want to see your status card. Or why don't you have dark black hair and 2 braids? Or I remember one, it was in junior high, and I was trying out for the track team, and one of the people trying out told me that the only reason I was fast was because my Indigenous people needed to be fast to hunt. And that one really, I've never heard that before, and I've never really heard anybody else say that before. So yeah, for me, that one kind of stuck out, and I didn't do anything about it because I don't know why I didn't do anything about it, but I'm a kid. You don't really know what to do when you're a kid, especially if you don't like you don't experience that a lot. And yeah, I just kind of held on to that. And I remember where I was, the kid that said it to me, the way he said it to me, like everything. And yeah.
Um, I got a few, but I'll tell you, I'll tell you one from, I shared this the other night. I'll tell you one. I'm playing for St. Francis Xavier University, and I was with my basketball team, so I'll do it like this. We would go for our team meals, and then we'd drop the girls off at the gym, the girls team, and then we'd walk around just to make sure we'd walk our food off before our game. I was in a certain setting. We were in the lobby of a certain area, and there was a little table there. It was myself and two of my other teammates who were white, and we were just all talking. There was a little table there, and so I rested my gluteus maximus on the table. Wasn't doing anything crazy. My feet were still on the ground, so it's not like I was completely like sitting crisscross applesauce on a table. But I just sat there, and security guard came by and just like lit into me. What are you doing? Get off the table. What are you doing? And I was like, all right, man, cool. No big deal. I got off the table. And because I've experienced it so much, I was like, there was nothing I was doing to the furniture. I'm pretty sure thousands of people probably leaned on this before. So that thing inside me hit was like, I know why this happened. And so I was with my two teammates, and they were like, yo, John, what's that guy's problem? And I said, I guarantee you he did that to me because I was black. And these guys were two white guys who grew up in Antigonish, which there's not too many people of minority there. So they're like, no. I said, do me a favor, please. The security guard was gone. I said, please just sit down on that table. Both of you put your glutes on that table. I will stand over here and see what happens. And they were like, no, John, no. I'm like, try it. They do it. Security guard comes walking by, and that's what he did. He walked right on by, saw them, went right to his desk and sat down, and their eyes just bulged open. And so for me, it wasn't the first time that I experienced something like this. So I use it as a tool, a teachable moment. Not like my teammates were racist, but a lot of times people think that we say stuff just to say it and we're playing a race card or something. When it happens to you so much, you just know what's going to happen. You know when it happens, you know that it's real. So that was one experience, and I'll leave it there. But it was more of a doing nothing, but got targeted because of my skin color. And yeah.
When you talk about that, so I know, Coach, we were chatting with was it 14 and 15 boys, and you had said that story. And one of the things that I touched on when you explained that was the constant invalidation of experiences. Because I think there's always the thought of racism is something that is in your face and it's blatantly obvious. It's getting arrested, it's getting pulled over, it's someone screaming the N-word in your face and everyone can hear it. And I think oftentimes when something really subtle happens, or something that doesn't seem like it's racism happens, the exact thing that you just explained happens to us on a regular occurrence. And then you just reach the point of, I'm not even going to try to explain myself. I'm just going to let this go because it's not worth arguing, and it's not worth having someone tell you they didn't mean it that way. It was just a joke. You misread it. They have a black friend. They're like, there's a whole bunch of things that get piled on. And I think the other interesting piece, especially for Ayanna, Winta, and Sean, is how you referenced how young you were when these things happened. And I think maybe my question to each of you was, did you talk to anyone? And if you didn't, why didn't you?
No, I definitely didn't talk to anyone at the school about it, and this was high school, so definitely didn't talk to the teacher, didn't talk to, you know, anyone above that, principal or anything, just basically let it slide just because I was just like, this guy, you know, he's obviously ignorant. You know, it definitely affected me at the time just with regards to, you know, how you feel when someone says something like that, but I guess I tried to let it roll off my back. To be honest with you, I don't even know if my mom knows that story. My dad, he's rest in peace, passed away when I was at the end of high school, but I I don't even think she knows that story. So I think I decided to internalize it and just, like I mentioned before, my parents raised me to, you know, just, you know, try not to let those things bother you, stand up for yourself kind of thing. And I wasn't trying to make a scene at the time. You know, I didn't really want anything to do with that particular person anyway. But I would definitely handle it different now. And I would definitely tell any youth to handle that differently now as well.
Mm. Winter, Anna, what about you two?
I think I definitely didn't tell my mom. I know I was definitely traveling with her that weekend. And I think it was more from like, why do I need to get her in the same mood and upset and angry like me? Like, I'm gonna just save her the burden where I obviously shouldn't have. I was a teenager, but yeah, like, because obviously as a parent you don't want to hear that your child is dealing with that kind of stuff. So I just slept it off, slept the rest of the car ride, and that was it.
I didn't say anything because I've never experienced something like that before. That was like the first one that I can remember that really like hit me like that. But also at that school, not a lot of people believed me. And it was kind of like I would just be running to someone and they'd be talking to a wall and no one would really like take me seriously. So I didn't want to like go to someone and then just be like, that did not happen and kind of tell me I was wrong again. So I just kind of kept it to myself. And I don't think I told my mom about it or my dad until I posted that thing on Facebook that I sent you, Tasia.
Mm-hmm.
I posted that long thing on Facebook and I said a couple of things about what I've experienced. And yeah, I didn't tell anybody until then. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Coach.
Just staying on this theme, just
Yep.
how there's a lot of power in our speech. And I'll give another instance. I was a grown man. This was maybe 2 years ago, and I'm being followed in a Sobeys where I shop all the time and give you guys thousands of my hard-earning dollars. And this guy follows me. I just left training. I was just training an athlete. It was summer. I just finished training him. I was busted. I'm like, I need a chocolate milk or something. I'm hot. And I'm walking in with basketball in my hand, wearing my triple threat gear, and I have a knapsack on my back. And I appreciate the fact that he said I look young like a kid, but the fact is, you follow me, and I was being me. I like to have fun, and this guy, I noticed he was following me. I'm like, okay, so you know what I'm gonna do? You follow me down aisle 1, and then I'm gonna sprint to aisle 4, and just see where you are. And long and behold, here he comes in aisle 4. And the funny thing was that he had like deodorant in his hand, and we're like in the chip aisle, and he's like trying to put the deodorant on the shelf and look at it. And I just said, is there a reason why you're following me? And he just like froze. And I'm like, I want to know why you're following me. Well, you came in with a knapsack and you fit the description. I said, what description? What description? The one who spends so much money at your, I said, where's your manager? And he didn't work there. Da, da, da. Anyways, I left. I was back at work that next week. I remember talking to my boss about it, and she's a white lady, but she's passionate. She's like, what? Somebody did that? And we got in her car. We drove to Sobeys, and she's like, I need to see your manager right now. This is a hardworking teacher for 12 years. And it's just like that, the Look commercial where you see that he's a judge, but because he's black, there's no way he can be doing something of this level. Marched down to the store and was like, listen, hard worker, this, da, 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 da. And then Sobeys did this apology. The guy got fired and all this kind of stuff. So I'm just saying, there's power in your speech, even if you don't stand up to the person who's doing it in that moment. But if you tell somebody afterwards, just not to keep it bottled up, and not saying that the result's going to be like my result was, but there's actually healing in your confession. It might not stop the ignorance of somebody else, but it's going to help you as you even start to speak about it. But I just wanted to share that there is power in saying it sometimes. And sometimes I keep a lot of things to myself, but sometimes I do say, and just the result there was a positive one.
I think I completely agree with you, Coach, in that sense. When I was younger, I probably didn't say too much, but I also think there was part of me that didn't quite understand what was going on. Like, I remember feeling like something was a little bit off with the way that maybe someone looked, or maybe a joke that was made, and I would probably laugh along with it. And I don't think it was until I got older that I started reflecting and was like, oh, I can't believe, like, they really did say that. That really did happen. And I talk about those situations a lot more. Like, I know people close to me probably get unloaded with like a lot of information all the time. Like, this happened. Like, I'm sure this is what was going on. So I know it feels better to communicate that. So, you know, when we're talking to any younger athletes that are on the call, or coaches that are on the call, it's so important that we have a safe space for our athletes to talk to us, because sometimes maybe they aren't going to be able to talk to their parent, or they aren't going to want to talk to their friends who might not understand. And that doesn't just go for race, it goes for several different things. When we talk about inclusivity and diversity in our sport, like sport in general, we're from so many different backgrounds with so many different unique parts to ourselves, that if we don't feel safe where we are being exactly who we are, then our athletes are going to get closed off, and it's going to bottle up. So it's hard to have a conversation and create that space, because sometimes you might only see them, you know, once a week in a practice or a weekend game. But, you know, you work with athletes for a period of time frequently when you're a coach. So if you start developing those relationships with them when they're younger and getting to know them, then maybe if you're coaching them when they're, you know, well, Ayanna's, how old are you? 19. I started coaching you when you were 13.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you and I would not talk about race and diversity and anything when you were 13, but now we talk about it all the time. So as coaches, it's building that relationship with your athletes so that they do feel comfortable with talking to you. And then even if you're not coaching them, they still might know that there's an ally that they can reach out to. And that ally can be anyone. It doesn't have to be someone who's black or white, or it's anyone that's leading sports. So I found it interesting that all three of you didn't talk to anyone about it, because, well, I know in times like I just wasn't really sure. I didn't know who to talk to and if they'd believe me.
I never talked, when I was younger, I really didn't talk to anybody about it either. But yeah, just jumping in on that point. When you were saying when you're younger, you didn't even know it was really happening. You just kind of went with the flow. And I remember I was in Shoppers Drug Mart, and again, getting followed, and something came over the PA system, which is it's gross, but it was like clean up in aisle 4 or something. And my friend who was working at the store came down, and he's like, "Oh, John Bell, what's up?" I'm like, "Nothing, man. I'm just like, I think I was looking for deodorant." And he's like, "That's weird." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Well, I know you don't steal, but the PA announcement was like, it was like their security code for there's somebody in the store that might steal." And I was 17, 18, and then it clicked to me like, wow, man, like this stuff is real. So, but I didn't talk to anybody about that experience unless I have conversations with a big group. I'll tell people. But yeah, hearing what you're saying, it's good that if we had somebody, if we knew we can trust somebody to speak about it. But yeah.
Question coming in. I know we have a few others here as well. So have any of the panel members had to explain to their athletes the significance of language norms? For example, many members of our Black community commonly refer to each other with the N-word, either in music or in conversation, and how can we as coaches of color or not deal with this? Right away, I read the word many. Many members of our Black community, and I think it's important to also remember that many members of our Black community don't refer to each other as the N-word. I've never called any of my friends that name, and no one has ever called me that name. So I like to reference that point because I get it. You hear it a lot. You hear it between people. Sometimes it's a white person to a white person, or a white person to a Black person in that dialogue. But in my space, in my Black community, in the Black people that I'm closest with, the N-word is not a term of endearment that I would ever use. And if one of my friends were to use that towards me, I would have a very big issue with that. But when we're talking about it as the context of music, we talked about this, I think, with our 17 boys. It's there, it's in our music, and not just the N-word. There's a lot of derogatory phrases towards other people, towards women. I think sometimes we forget when the music is playing in the gym and there's a lot of females or women that are there watching, and some of the stuff that's said is like, ugh, like that is not appropriate. So I don't think I've ever had the conversation with my athletes about that word. I would say maybe partially due to the fact that I wouldn't be that comfortable right now in having that discussion, because I haven't built those solid relationships with them to be able to tell them how to change their language when they're talking to one another. But at the same time, the expectation of when you're representing our province with Basketball Nova Scotia is that we don't condone or support anybody that does use that, but we also know that we don't hear or see everything that's going on all of the time. I know that a lot of times there's discussion around, how come the N-word can be said between Black people, but a white person can't say it? Like, how come if they can say it, I can't say it? And I don't have a lot of history around that, other than my understanding is trying to take ownership of that word again, because it was something that was used to put people down and make them feel less than. And now by reclaiming that word and by using it as a term of endearment, I'm taking the power of that word away. But again, I don't have all of the information around that, but I think that those are conversations that you're absolutely allowed to have, because like I said, if I was in a gym, hearing the N-word doesn't make me feel comfortable at all. So if I was coaching athletes and that was a phrase that was being used, or if there was music that I didn't like, I don't have a problem with the athletes that I'm coaching at that time saying we're not doing that. Put your headphones on and I'm not listening anymore. Have any of you had conversations with your athletes around that? Go ahead.
Teammates in high school, and it was in music. But the thing is that, like, as someone that isn't of color, you can, like, took the time out of my, like, to learn about it and to learn what it meant, and not just like as a slang term that people say all the time. Like, I really tried to learn the whole history of it, and then explain to them what it meant, because like you can't just, it's not just like you said, Tasia, it's not just a word that is in a song. Like, it has history to it, and there's a backstory, and there's like almost everything. So like you need to really understand what you're saying before you just say it, because you'll really offend someone, and a lot of people don't realize that. So that's what I tried to tell them, and I said it with some of my players too. But like, you really just need to set in stone, like, it's not something that you can say. If someone says it to you, then you need to understand what you can do, and that just comes from education and really looking at like the history of a word, and many other words too, but in particular that one. So
can I ask a question, Ayanna, on that point? I think a lot of times, and I know you and I chatted about it previously just before jumping on the call, could you give everyone a bit of a breakdown of the term um, Indian, Aboriginal, and Indigenous? I think, unfortunately, a lot of times the first word I used is a term that is used to describe your race, your culture, your heritage, and that would be incorrect. So this might be a nice little educational piece as well.
So Indigenous includes everybody. So that's Métis, Mi'kmaq, all of that stuff. Aboriginal is just really focusing in on Mi'kmaq and like full First Nation status people. Indian is referring to someone from India. We're not from India. So like it's just like 3 separate generations too. So like some people, like elders, they're used to hearing the term Indian, so they're fine with it. But people in newer generations, such as myself or such as other people my age, they might not be comfortable with being called an Indian. But honestly, it's preference. It really, like, you really don't know, and you have to kind of ask. But me personally, it's Indigenous. Aboriginal makes me feel like I'm not normal. And yeah, that's basically all I can really say on that. So
that's fine. Thank you. Have any of our other coaches had a chat around the N-word and it showing up in music and conversation amongst your athletes? And how did you handle that?
I'll chime in here. I mean, we don't necessarily, I mean, it's in the music and people are going to sing along to it. And we don't necessarily limit people from that perspective. But if it were to be used towards each other, we use, like, I at least will just pull a guy to the side and like, watch your language. And we just like equate it with any other negative word or like a swear word or whatever. Like, this is a basketball context. It's like a professional context. You know, we try to limit our use of negative words. So, and I've never made a huge deal of it to make it a huge teaching point. But I think at this point in time now, especially with the older athletes that I'm coaching, they understand that it shouldn't be used so loosely. But like you said before, we don't know what happens in their rooms if we're on a road trip or whatever, right? So we do have some control, or can be role models in how we communicate with each other as coaches, and how we communicate with our athletes, and just giving them those little reminders is sort of where what I've done in the past with that.
For myself, obviously this year is a bit of a different year because of COVID-19 and such, and so we're not playing as we normally would be. But last season specifically, with Coach Keith Andrews as the head coach and myself as his assistant, there was a routine rule for practice. You could listen to music, but it was absolutely no music with any kind of swearing, any curse words, any racial epithets, anything like that. So if you wanted to listen to something, it had to be at the very minimum, the clean version, if you wanted to play it in the gym. And so that was one way that we, kind of had limited any a negativity with regards to the music that was being played. But as you mentioned, Tasia, as a Black person myself, and I do listen to music that contains those words, but that's, to me, that's the artist experience. That's maybe what they grew up and referring to friends or other people, but that's not my experience. And so I'm not going to use that word. And so I'm not going to perpetuate that by saying or using something that I don't use just because it happens to be in music that I listen to. And I think that's a context that sometimes is lost and isn't necessarily understood. So it's not a word I use to treat or to greet any friends of mine of color. And certainly not a word I would want someone saying to me, but that certainly is prevalent in music, movies, comedy, things like that. But there's context.
Yeah, that was a question that just came in here. What about music in our warm-up and halftime? Do you allow it? My answer would be no. I know at
clean
St. Mary's
versions only.
It's clean versions, and for some songs, there's a lot of silence because it's a clean version, which is totally fine. But sometimes you can, for the most part, fill in the blank in that sense. Yeah, that was a good way to put it, Sean, when you talk about it's the artist's experience. But as coaches and as leaders in our sport, it's our responsibility to make a decision for the entire team that would make the entire team feel safe. So when we're working with young adults, they're not going to probably be ones to tell their friends not to play that song. And all it takes is one athlete who's not comfortable with it, that could be bothered the entire warm up, and then go home to their family and say, like, I did not enjoy that. Every time we go to warm up or every time it's halftime, all I hear is the N word, and I don't like it, but I don't know how to approach my coach. I don't know how to tell my teammates. I don't want my teammates to exclude me or call me a loser or an outcast. So as coaches, you almost have to bear the brunt of it and say, it's not happening. We're not playing it. And your athletes can be upset and disappointed in you, but you've helped an athlete feel safe in that environment, and you bear the weight of that decision. And ultimately, you can turn it into a teaching point as well. Like when you get out into the working world, that language is not going to be okay. Like you need to increase your vocabulary and learn how to call people by their first names, or Mr. and Mrs. or doctor, and the N-word's not the way that you're going to address people out in the world.
Yeah, you nailed what I was gonna talk about too. For those who don't know me, I'm very, and no pun intended, but I'm very black and white when I speak. There's no really gray area with me. So I'm going to tell you exactly what's on my mind. I'm going to do it in a way that's respectful, but Tasia nailed it. And I said it before, there was so much power in your speech. So you have the ability, like when I go for a job interview, I'm not going to be talking that way, or you're not going to be talking that way. So just because you're amongst your friends doesn't make a cuss word okay, doesn't make a racial slur okay. None of those stuff make it okay. So like I'm like, it's not happening. And I'm standing on the fact that my firm stance is going to help somebody, even the person that I spoke to, saying, I'll ask them, why did you say that? If you ask them a question, why did you say that? Most people can't answer. And then they're going to have to, when you ask somebody a question, they have to start thinking. They might come at you rudely and be like, whatever, man, why are you so soft? But as an athlete on a team, if something bothers you, you should be able to say something to your teammate in a way that's going to make them think. As a coach, like Winter said, she pulled the one over and said, listen, man, watch your language. I, as a coach, I've put everybody on the line when one person cussed. They missed a layup and they cussed. I said, we're doing a 17. And why? Because that person swore. You control what comes out of your mouth. So let me calm down.
You're right up here right now.
I know.
Go ahead.
But so as a coach, it's not happening because it doesn't have to. You can control what comes out of your mouth. And the music, I did a study in university where when you talked about women, Tasia, and because of my Jamaican background, I broke down a reggae song. First, I played the reggae song in university. It was a social studies class. And I said, how many people love this song? And the girls who threw their hands up, oh, I love that beat. I love that beat. I said, great. Let me break down the patois for you and tell me what this guy's saying about you. And by the time I was through the first verse, all their eyes were like, whoa. I'm like, so you just can't listen to a song and repeat the words that somebody's saying just because it's in that song. And that's what bothers me, because these hip hop or rap artists are so talented that you don't have to throw it in. That's another conversation. I'm not going to, but anyways, you have power to say something and it will make a difference as a coach and as an athlete.
A bit of a comment, I guess, here. And they're not wrong. The 2016 census indicated that people of African descent, and I would also like to make note of that. I was reading some different literature on language being used. I think it's written as African descent in the census, but Coach Bell, are you African descent? Yeah, I kind of realized that when I was doing some reading on it. So understanding at the same time, not every Black person in Nova Scotia or across Canada originates from Africa. And I know that, you know, I probably would have seen Coach Bell way back in the day and been like, oh, he's African Nova Scotia. Like he's not. So it is interesting. And I know the individual who referenced this, I know that I read it as African descent in the census as well, which was very specific. So anyways, it says that 2.4% of the population in Nova Scotia are of African descent. So 2.4% is not a high percentage at all. I think Indigenous represents maybe 5%, I think, not too much.
The last one I said was 3.
Was
I
it
saw
3?
3, like exactly on the dot 3.
The perfect amount.
Mhm.
So this individual is making reference to the fact that we can't represent ourselves fairly when it comes to policies in this country. But obviously we're indicating here, talking about Nova Scotia, we can't change everything. We can't, we can advocate for ourselves, but it only goes so far because our population base is so small. So this individual is saying that we all need to help and make this fair for us, for lack of a better term. When only 2.4% of us can advocate for a certain policy, it's not going to change. There needs to be help from everyone. And again, this isn't just something, I know it's very specific to policy around African Nova Scotians, but that goes for policies for anyone who falls into a minority where a policy doesn't fit them. It's not just up to that group to solve the problem. It's up to all of us. And it's up to all of us to take our time to educate ourselves. I don't know if my good friend Cher is on this call with, she knows far more about wheelchair basketball than I do, but her and I have talked back and forth about understanding wheelchair basketball. It's something that I was not familiar with. But at the same time, I can't turn to Cher and expect her to be the only one advocating for wheelchair basketball and expect her to educate me about everything around that sport. It's up to me to educate myself as well, because it's not fair for me to take the burden and put it on Cher and say, you teach me. So when we're talking about this as well, yes. So it's just really important that we all try to educate ourselves with everyone else, and not just turn to that specific group and expect them to teach us, because it can get tiring. I'm just going to pull up a couple questions here. Any other comments on that?
I think I just want to tag on to what you said there. And I think us, you know, in the sport context as coaches, you know, whether you're Black or not, you are going to be that person who can help bring some of these issues to light, to your personal day-to-day lives, to your family lives, and educate people on that as well. Because, you know, we're coaching athletes, but at the end of the day, we're coaching humans, and we need to be able to understand that, you know, the lessons that they're learning through sport are going to be things that they're going to transfer into their day-to-day, and the things that I'm learning through coaching them through sport are the things that I need to transfer to day-to-day. So making sure that we can, you know, continue to empower our athletes, but also take the small things that we learn from here and help empower adults in our life as well.
All right, I'm going to read a statement here that farmers are also in the 3% range in Nova Scotia, and it's important to recognize that there are many groups of importance that have carved out the sphere of influence.
Can you repeat that, please?
Farmers are also in the 3% range in Nova Scotia. It is important to recognize that there are many groups of importance that have to carve out their sphere of influence.
I just want to quickly touch on the percent. We heard about the 2.4 and the 3, and I know everybody's saying we gotta come together and get it done. It can't just be that 2.4. It just can't be the 3%. We all got to help out. But I still want to give credit to a 2.4. I still want to give credit to a 3% and just encouraging people to keep doing it, because if I have 49%, I fail. If I get 51%, I pass. I get my credit. So I'm not doing that semester all over. It's not a great grade, but bottom line is I have succeeded a bit. So even though the percentage might be low, 22,000 people, when you look at it based on whatever 100%, we still have power in our speech. And I don't know why I'm stuck on that, but I know there's death and life is in the power of our tongue. And so even the 2.4 and even the 3%, let's continue to speak about it, because then you know what? Then the other percentage is going to start to tag along and be like, oh, okay, cool. And then that 2.4 turns into 2.5, and it keeps going and keeps going. So just encouragement that, yeah, we do it. We talk about it. We say one thing. Tasia was on the conversation that we had on Monday, and there was a parent on there that I didn't know this parent, but at a basketball game, I said one thing to one guy on the court 4 years ago, and she brought it up on Monday, and she wasn't even at the game. She's like, oh, I heard about this story. And all I said was to the guy was, do you really have to swear when we play? Do you really have to call the Lord's name in vain when we play? And he shrugged me off, but 4 years later, it's still going strong from my one question that just made somebody think.
I want to add on to that, sorry. Today's day and age of social media can literally cause a wildfire, especially in young people. So if you see one of your friends posting something that you agree with in terms of the movement happening right now, or things that you didn't even know, and you're trying to like get information so you can speak out on it, don't post something that you have no idea what it is, but you want to post it because your friend is. Take the time to actually learn of what it's saying and learn the information, and kind of, even if you want to get more on that one subject, go and look at it yourself, because like you can't expect someone, like you said earlier, Tasia, like you can't expect anyone like in that group of people, that 2.4, that 3, they're not going to try to defend themselves and try to educate you all the time. So you need to really take the time to teach yourself and see all of the pieces that are available right now. Especially, they're so easy to get your hands on. So take advantage of that.
One thing I'd like to add, just with regards to the farmer comment, is that's absolutely true. It's a occupation that needs assistance and has its own struggles, but respectfully, I think that's a separate conversation than what we're having now. People of color are people that are being attacked, people that are not having their needs met by society and need collective assistance from a greater number of people. So if we're 2.4% of the population, like Jonathan said, we need another 49% of people to assist in carrying those policies and messages forward. That's how systemic things never get broken, because they affect a small number of people, and then the majority aren't interested in helping to break those cycles and systems. That's where the education comes in, to understand the plight of the 3% Indigenous, 2.4, 2.5% Black in Nova Scotia, and that's where we come together. So while I understand, I believe what the person was referring to, they don't equate in my mind. It's two different conversations. That's a conversation for a different day, not personally, not for today. We have to look at the issues at hand now and get everyone's collective understanding so that we can work together to be able to reflect the ideals that Nova Scotia and Canada stand for. Because to be honest, especially on an Indigenous front, it's embarrassing that in Canada, we have Indigenous people who don't have access to clean water, right? It's embarrassing that the education level and system has such disparities in it. And the information that's being taught in the education system has an impact on what people think and how they go ahead in life. If you're not told certain things when you're at a young age, then you don't know any better. And then you go into life thinking one way or the other. Whereas if we can, talking about the power of words, the power of words comes through the power of education. If you give those people the information that they need to understand the plight of others and what others are going through, and makes people more empathetic and helps everyone. And I think that's what needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that silence spoke volumes when I read that statement. And I'll be quite honest, that really frustrated me. I would not consider farmers in a place where they could be arrested, murdered, any bad thing that could possibly happen to a farmer in the run of a day is not even close to what happens to Black and Indigenous people in our country. So I think the intent for me to read that was to really draw to the fact that there are percentages of people, of course, that do other things, and they're a very small pocket, but our pocket of people are suffering across the board through school, through sport, work. Like, some of us can submit our resume and our resumes get tossed out because I can't pronounce your name. We had a person in that addressed that, and they changed their name with the exact same resume, and they got the interview. So yeah, that's there are 3% of farmers. So when we shift back to basketball, there was a question that came in: what can officials and coaches do to make their team maybe more comfortable if something racist occurs? And when I read it, I thought it was a really, really good question, because the instant thought is, how do I make people comfortable in that setting? And I don't know if you can. It's very uncomfortable sometimes, and a lot of times the reaction from perhaps the person that received that racial slur or comment, they're going to react differently to how their teammates are feeling. So I don't know if there can be a blanket statement as to how we all make that team collectively feel comfortable. But maybe it stems back to creating that safe environment where the team knows if they do hear something or they see something, they can approach you and talk to you about it. But I would say it's uncomfortable. Like, there just is no way that you can say, no, you know what, I'm sorry that happened, let's move on, let's play. It's real tough. And most of them will carry that home and maybe not talk about it with their family or hold on to it for a period of time. So I think the first part for me, and anyone can chime in here, would be recognizing that it is uncomfortable. And it's okay to notice how uncomfortable people are, because I think that that's what makes us human. If we try to just brush it under a rug and pretend like it's not happening, then we're not acknowledging the feeling that our athletes are having. So I think it goes back to creating that safe space for your athletes to be in, and then knowing full well that racism is going to happen. It's going to happen. We're all going to get off the call and experience something within the next day or two. It could be something big or something very small. It's going to happen, and our job as coaches and as officials is to validate the person that experienced it. Don't say it didn't happen. Maybe they meant this. Maybe they were saying it to somebody else. Please don't do that, because that's when the athletes stop talking. So if you hear an athlete, if an athlete approaches you or you see something that is racist, acknowledge it and then have the dialogue. And it could get a little bit uncomfortable, but that's okay. We're here to support. And as an official, sometimes you hear more what's going on the court than a coach does. So it's okay to go and talk to both coaches, I think, at a time that's appropriate. I mean, I'm not an official, but I think you could also stop the game as well and bring the coaches over and say, this is what I heard. And I think from there, it's a bigger picture on how officials and organizations handle those situations. Because right now, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like if that happens. Is it a 3-game suspension? Does it go to a hearing? So there's a lot that has to unpack in that. But I think the first part is acknowledging that it happened and not trying to turn a blind eye to it and instantly try to soothe and make everything better.
That's amazing, Tasia. And leaders have to have courageous conversations. So if you're a leader, you're a coach, you're a leader. If you're a ref, you're a leader at that moment. You have to have that courageous conversation. And working with youth so much, when you show them that you care and when you show them that they can speak to you, it does wonders. So just the fact of, like you're saying, not brushing it under a rug, if you want to say that, but like drawing the attention. Like, I'm not saying you have to like stop the whole practice and make a big ordeal, but like, listen, man, talk to me. What happened? Okay, we're going to address this. We're going to address this. It's not just going to go away. We're going to address it. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And so that the whole team now knows, or everybody around, this is a serious issue that we want to address. So leaders need to have courageous conversations. Like you said, it will be uncomfortable, but it's in the state of being uncomfortable that you do something that's going to make you better as it is. If I keep dribbling the ball like this with my right hand and I'm not really working, no, I'm not going to get a better basketball player. I have to put myself in a position where I'm actually working and I'm actually leaving my comfort zone for a change to happen. So we just got to have the conversation. Just be courageous, be like, listen, anyways, yeah.
Can I respond to something in the chat, please?
Yep.
Great. This is a conversation about racism and things that we've dealt with in sport and things that, like, how we can keep a conversation and start a conversation with athletes. We're not focusing on other societal issues right now. We're focusing on what's happening currently. So we're not going to focus on the farmer conversation. We're going to focus on other things that are happening. And yeah.
Yeah. No,
It's not about the other societal issue. It's about what's going on in the world currently right now.
And but see, in that, to me, that's exactly what's happening, is that the thing at hand is now getting pushed under when we start talking about something else. And like I said, there's power in your words. Even if you're just typing it, there's power. Let's stay where we're at. Let's talk about the real issues, and let's leave all educated and better. I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone that's reading the chat, you can see it. It's going to all panelists, and all attendees can see what's happening there. And very clearly, someone's last name is matching with someone else's last name in this conversation, and that's not fair. It's not fair to her. So stop doing that. So when Jonathan says there's power in words, this 19-year-old is stepping out of her comfort zone to have a conversation with us and with the other people that are on the panel. And if you do not want to acknowledge that there is racism that is happening to her and to the rest of us, that is not fair. So you can clearly see on her screen that she is upset. And I'd like to take the time to acknowledge, if everyone can write in the chat and give Ayanna just a little bit of words of encouragement, I think that would go a long way.
And I think this is an example, like when there are uncomfortable times, exactly as Tasia has just shown, you have to call it out for what it is. Like you can't leave your athletes hanging when they're suffering.
No.
Yeah, man. It has power. It has power. So that's big ups, Tasia, for doing that, because look, it's causing a ripple effect right now. Anyways, man, I'm loving this. This is real. We're having real conversation, and people need to hear something sometimes just to get put in their place. Because me, I'd be just, do this. You can go. You don't want you, you peace out. But it's just good. It's just good.
Yeah. Like, I can't emphasize that this conversation, it happens all of the time. So when I say like this is going to be a real conversation, I didn't think that it was going to go in this direction, but it's
Real.
real, and it is gut wrenching all of the time. And very clearly, I can't reach through a screen and give Ayanna a hug. But as you can see, everybody is supporting you, Ayanna, and you're so loved and so appreciated. And I'm so proud of you for doing this. I really am. I really am.
Yeah. So there's a little doggy coming. That would not be me. That would not be me. I know there's a lot of dog lovers out there, but not me.
So in this situation, as Jonathan said, it's uncomfortable. It is awkward. It's frustrating. It brings out so many emotions. And I think for me, when we talk about, what are we going to do when an athlete is uncomfortable, you're kind of looking at it. You need to support the person, and you need to address the situation that's happening, which is very, very hard to do. But I think we have a lot of really great coaches and a lot of really great leaders in this province that are so supportive and are on this call for a reason. And the reason is to learn. And I hope that you are all learning. I am certainly learning. I'm pretty sure that's the first time that I've expressed a little bit of anger and frustration and disappointment in front of 83 people. I don't usually do that, but this is something that goes right to the soul.
Yeah.
Right to the core of the matter, really. A lot of things that we're seeing, really what we're seeing right now reflects what we're trying to overcome in society. And if we can have that understanding, and people who may think a different way truly listen and open their minds to what we're all explaining, hopefully we're making a difference, even in difficult situations like we're kind of doing right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to change overnight, and not everyone's going to change. And there are battles that you pick and choose. And I think right now, that was certainly a battle I picked because it was on a screen for everybody to see there, and I felt that it was important to address. But again, we're all doing this together, and there's a lot of really great people out there, and the conversation can't end right now. It has to continue, and it has to be awkward and challenging and open and honest, and that's the only way that we'll get somewhere. If we aren't that way, then we're going to be stuck in the same spot for a long period of time. Sean and Coach, you got a nice compliment in here. As a mom of an athlete who has played for both Coach Bell and Coach Sean Francois, I want to comment on both of them for being respectful and having zero tolerance of any disrespectful approaches. It is greatly appreciated and contributes to a positive and safe atmosphere for all of our players in the gym, which I think is really what we're all trying to do, regardless of race. We're trying to make everybody comfortable, if they're white, if they're black, if they're brown, if they're in a wheelchair, if they're part of the LGBTQ community. Our job as coaches is to make them feel welcome. It's a safe space for them. And the gym is where they go to have an outlet. And if that outlet isn't safe for them anymore, they don't want to come back. And that's when they start drifting into places that we don't want them to go.
Yeah. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around why we would treat people different based, like, even when I hear oh, that guy can jump for a white guy. What do you what do you mean? If he can jump, he can jump. And even in the video we saw where she said, oh, you're pretty for a black girl. Like the way society has shaped minds, but then again, we all have the power not to. Like I don't have Facebook, I don't have Twitter, I don't have Instagram, and I'm 100% grateful I don't. Because it's a choice that I've made. So bottom line is that we all have choices that we can make where, you know what, you make everybody feel welcome, because when you don't, you're basically saying you're better than them. And so I don't understand if somebody comes that's white, somebody comes that black, and you want to put them down, you have to check yourself first. Like do a good self check and say, who am I? I don't care what your status, I don't care how much money you have, I don't care how many points you dropped the game before, I don't care how many championships you have. Who am I really to say anything negative to anybody about their race, their beliefs, their lifestyle choices? And if you can honestly look yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, I have every right to say that, you need some Windex. You need to clean your mirror. And you need to look again, because me, myself, like, uh, anyways, so we should just check ourselves before we speak out and lash out, because if you're trying to make yourself self-righteous, that's the problem. You can't make yourself self-right. It's not going to work. Anyways, JB's going to calm down.
So what's next? That was a question that someone had put in there. What's next after the rallies and the outrage has settled down? Where do we go? I think the rage is probably there for the 5 of us that are on here. Like even when the outcry dies down and the hashtag disappears, it's the same for us. It doesn't change. We're still in the same boat when we walk certain places. We still have the same anxiety when we think about our 6'5" brother wandering through downtown Halifax. Like that is a reality for us. So I think for me, where I would like for it to go is the conversation keeps happening, and that everyone that's listening knows that I'm here to have that conversation, and I know our Nova Scotia coaches are, and I'm sure Winta has the same thing with her group, that we want to talk and we want to share and we want to bring people together. Because if it just stops after a week of rallies, then we're going to be having this conversation in a couple of years. And I went to the prayerful protest on Sunday, and I went with my mom and my grandmother, and it's kind of surreal to look and say, like, really, like my grandmother's back here doing this again. And I'm sure that my mom has gone through different things, and it's like, we're doing this again. And then they're probably looking at me like, she's doing this? Like, she wasn't supposed to go through this. So I know that, like, that Coach Bell and Coach Sean, you have little ones, you have kids, and you're probably hoping, like, we can't do this again. I can't be going to a protest with them again and be reflecting on being in the exact same spot. But maybe this time of being in quarantine has maybe connected people more, because we can't watch basketball games right now. We can't watch sports. We can't go out and about. So you're really tuned in with what is going on across the globe. And all of a sudden, maybe there's a little bit of eye-opening that's happening. And there's certainly eye-opening that's happening for me. I have never really been one to speak out about race and how I have felt. So this put me in a place of, like, I can't not say anything. I can't not share how I'm feeling, because I know that there are athletes in our program that are feeling the same way that I am. So if I can't say it and let them know that I hear them and I see them, they're not going to say anything. So I just think, quarantine isn't, or not quarantine, but isolation isn't exactly the greatest thing ever. But again, there's still 82 people listening and helping us. And I think we're in a place that we can move forward in our own communities, and then ultimately, hopefully, across the world.
Oh, that's amazing. Well said. Well said.
Yeah. And
Sorry, can go
no,
ahead.
go ahead, Anna. Go ahead.
Okay. I want to say for the young people that are here, I get to see a lot of maybe both yours and a lot of other people's social medias. I am the social media person, so I do see you guys. And I'd like to say that this is not a trend. This isn't something you get to post a black screen for and then go back to.
Oh, you're frozen.
My back? Oh no.
There you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Yeah, you don't get to go post a black screen and then post a picture with your friend the next day and then think that you're good. That's not what it is. You're either all in or you're not. You can't just kind of be there when you want to be. And it comes to a place, like I said before, where you can't post something that, or if you're trying to post on social media, and I've read this, Barb just said this, but you need to put actions behind your words. So if you aren't able to go to a protest or you aren't able to donate things, check in on your friends, because you can be an ally that isn't trying to blast what they're doing all over social media. You don't need to promote what you're doing. You can be there behind the scenes. So don't do it just because it's a trend. Do it because you genuinely care and you want to be a change. Because personally, I know and I see a lot of my friends and people that are continuing on their everyday lives, and it is so frustrating because we all share those friends, and it's coming to a time right now where I'm very ready to just either cut them out if they don't want to hear me talk, or like it's getting to that point. So please, action behind your words and don't just think it's a trend. That's my biggest thing right now, and that's what I've noticed the most.
I sort of want to address like the coaches in this chat. First off, thank you for coming. Obviously you came here because you wanted to learn and be open to this, and open to learning how to be better and do more for your athletes. I want you to always remember, like, you're putting yourself in this position, in a leadership position, as Jonathan mentioned before, not just because you have good technical basketball skills, but because you think you can influence a younger generation and influence minds and influence how they're going to be when they grow up and how they're going to go into the world. And having that power, you have to also always think about where they're coming from and making sure that you're always taking that into consideration in the way you practice as a coach, how you hold yourself accountable as a coach, and making sure you're advocating for them outside of a basketball context. Mm-hmm. So, going back to tying into making sure you have that safe space so that they can come to you, because you might be that other person that understands them or who's willing to, hear their grievances. You're going to be a sounding board. And it's like, if you don't feel comfortable with doing that, then maybe, being in this leadership position is something that you should, think about. Like, you have to be able to be willing to grow as a coach as well for these people skills and being that leader, and not just, the technical skills and doing a great webinar and how to learn about this new zone press or whatever it is. Like, you need to be able to learn more about the human condition, and sport is a microcosm of society at large. And if we can't take the things that we learn in the real world and apply it to our athletes and how we treat them and how we treat others, then there's no point to all of this.
Nice.
That, without a doubt, went to, for me, after the rallies and the outrage kind of, settles, and hopefully it doesn't, but that's part of it. We need that sustained attention, focusing on policies that need change, laws, things that are preventing equality and preventing equity. Some other things I think that are important, at least especially based on a lot of things that happened on this call today, and not to dwell on that, but it's just important to think about as we go forward. Self-assess, right? Continue to educate yourself and others. Identify gaps and recognize biases, like, within groups that you are working with, within yourself, in your workplace, in your volunteer organizations, and in your own actions. It's very important to look within and also to look outward, because collectively is the only way we're going to get there. But truly, there's a lot of things that are baked into the system that people don't even realize are there. And it's only then that we can break down, like I said, policies and laws, and really look at what is affecting society to move forward and really break those things down. A lot of times it's Band-Aids that have been put on things, and not that something has been broken down to be able to reach a level of equity and be able to reach a level of equality. If they're just putting Band-Aids on things that have already been broken. Things have to be broken down and then brought back up so that you can see those levels of equity and equality represented across the board.
Yeah, you sometimes you have to tear down to build up. And I remember I preached a message on that one time where you have to tear down to build up. It's fine to do little. There's something when you tidy up, like you're saying, a Band-Aid, try to tidy up, and then there's a real cleanup. And when you really want to clean up and do a renovation, you got to tear down, get to the root of the issue so you can solve things. And that's what we're trying to do, is that it's more than what we see. It's years of this, not just what you're seeing right now, but it's years of this. You tear down to build up. You really got to get to the root of the issue to see what's causing the problem with the fruit on the tree, right? I can't just say, why is this one apple bad? Let me get down, let me cut this tree down, get to the root of the problem so that I can start planting proper seeds and get a nice flourishing apple tree the way it should be, the way the world should be. So yeah, I like that point.
It's 8:36. We scheduled it until 8:30. Clearly we went a little rogue there. But again, I think that it's just important for everyone who's listening who maybe hasn't experienced a microaggression or racism or anything along those lines, that what we experience and probably what we just showed you is very raw and very real. And it's occurring in our support systems as well. And we all have to do a better job at being better people, I think is the term I'm going to go with. Just across the board, just being better people who are, like Winta said, we're coaching because we're competitive and we like to win, but we also know that eventually the athletes that we're working with are going to move on and do something else. They're going to be teachers or physiotherapists. They're going to do something else, and we want to have an impact on them where they can reflect back on the team that they were on with us and say, you know what, I learned something from Winta. You know, Winta corrected me and taught me, you know, don't use the N-word. It's probably not a good idea. And that's huge. Those are really small teaching points that can go a long way, I think.
That's money. If each one reaches one, the impact that we can have. And that's what's special to me. You know what? Not too many people are coming back to me like, oh, Coach Bell, man, that crossover you taught me is money. I'm dropping buckets.
Probably would though.
when I get like my birthday just passed and I'm getting text messages from kids that I coached and Coach Bell, and they always say, thank you for the things, the life lessons you taught me. To me, I'm like, yes, one little thing I'm imparting. If you don't go play university somewhere, okay, you don't play university somewhere. If you don't make pros, that's fine. But that one life lesson you're going to take with you forever is my goal. So as coaches, like Winta's saying, like Tasia was saying, we play an important role. So everybody who's on this chat that's trying to learn, big ups to you, enough respect that you're here trying to, learn from it. So yeah, that's big. So just, yeah, each one reach one.
Each one teach one. Yeah. Wade Smith. Absolutely.
That's a community-wide motto.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably it. I clearly failed here, Ayanna, and I told you don't forget to turn a light on because it's going to get dark, and I did not do that myself. Everyone else seemed to follow the guidelines. If we've donated, signed petitions, educated ourselves, tried to educate others when they're being racist, but aren't able to go to protests, what else can we do to be informed and spread awareness on this very important issue? That's a really good question.
I've got one thing I can add to that.
Go ahead.
So
Turn
a
a light
good
on while
a friend of ours on the chat, Mrs. Frances Waterman O'Connell, she had shared some great resources. And one of them in particular is a website called embracerace.org. And there are a bunch of fantastic resources for children, for adults. There's podcasts, there's webinars, YouTube stuff. And I had an opportunity to review the content, and I thought it was very good. So shout out to Francis for that. And again, embracerace.org.
Nice.
Perfect. Awesome. Great. Well, go ahead, Ayanna. You're going to say something there.
Educate yourself even more. There's so many things that you can learn that you think you know a lot. You think you know everything, and you don't. There's so many underlying things that you can learn. So continue to look at other things. Like you might find one thing. I'll use Africville for an example. You might find one thing about Africville, and then you'll get down that road, and then you'll turn around and look at, oh, why was the RCMP created? Like, it's just like, it's an ever-ending thing. And you can learn about so many things because a lot of people probably don't know that. And I recently just learned that. So you can find out more things even about your own culture that you didn't even know about, your own race that you didn't even know about, and continue to spread that as well. And not just, well, I learned this one thing, so that's all I need to do. Continue to educate yourself.
There's a lot. I will never sit here and say that I know everything about my community and my heritage and my culture and my race. I don't. Like I said, I don't fully understand the origins of the N-word. So I have to take the time to educate myself, and it's something that I live in every single day. So yeah, I agree with Ayanna. There's a lot to unpack. And I think really try to narrow it down to Canada. A lot of stuff that we watch on Netflix and crave and read in books, it's very specific to the United States. Really valuable. But I think when we read all of that, we tend to forget that racism still occurs in our own backyard. It's difficult to find some things that are specific to Nova Scotia and to Canada, but it's there. And I think it makes things a little bit more relevant as well. And also knowing that we're not too far removed from when a lot of bad things were happening. So it would be naive of us to say, well, it's been, X amount of years, so everything's good now. Obama was in office. It's still here and it's still prevalent, and we have a long way to go. And the only way that we can do that is together, and by having these conversations, and then knowing that you can reach out and we can continue the conversation as we move forward, and hopefully in person with one another. That would be helpful. Anything else anyone wants to add before we sign out here?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you to all of you. For the panelists, I know we talk about this stuff all the time, whether it's in our own homes or with the people closest to us, but I know that there are several people that maybe have never had the conversation before or had it to a very small amount. So the fact that, you've all taken an hour and 45 minutes of your time on a Wednesday night to listen to us and ask us questions and engage in a conversation in the chat means a whole lot to me. And it is helping me realize that there are more safe spaces to talk about this than just within my own little pocket of people. There are other people that I can communicate with, and I think that's very valuable for me to know as well.
Thank you, Tasia, for setting this up, and thank you for everyone behind the scenes who helps, start this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not. This is not it, though, right? This is not it.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning. That's right.
Just the start.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being very open and honest. Obviously, Ayanna and I just, well, we need some bridges to get across some tiers, but that's totally fine. Someone will build those for us.
Brought in from 80 people. God.
And I hope we can all chat again soon. And to everyone listening, please don't hesitate to email or contact me and anyone else that's comfortable with it. I'll be happy to share their email addresses as well, and continue sharing resources with one another. Awesome. Thanks, everyone, and have a great night.
Are we staying or
I mean, you can stay if you want. We can chat.
I didn't know. I thought we were staying and everybody else was going, but
No, everyone else is tuning out. I can leave meeting and end it all for everyone, I think, or I think Catherine might have to do it, but.
oh yeah, I have the power right here. There's a red button that says leave.
You can leave. Yeah, Winch is already gone.
Yeah, she is.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was awesome.
All right, I'm gonna press leave meeting.
Oh, don't wait. Okay, you can do it.
Okay. Bye.